three great speakers. Our first speaker, Mr. Adesina is going to be speaking about, with these three simple rules, you can become a safe, defensive road warrior. It's speech number 5 from the basic manual. His speech objective is to show body language, which I know he's good at. And it's 5 to 7 minutes. He's an avid soccer player and fan. He likes to talk about soccer, but he's stepping outside of his comfort zone to talk about something else today. Let's give a big round of applause to Adesina.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. One afternoon, not too long ago, I was driving on I-95 North. The clock must have been about 3 o'clock, but the sun was nowhere to be found, because outside looked just as now if you look through the windows. But the day was still beautiful nonetheless. And I was taking it easy. I stayed in the middle lane. But I say that now with a smile, because my speed was actually 85 miles per hour. So you could imagine how fast and furious the traffic was on that day, on that cloudy day. And as I was going along, all of a sudden, out of the blue, came this car on the left side and was trying to cut in front of me. And I stepped up the speed, and the car sped up too. I sped up again to close the gap, and the car sped up. And for a moment, it felt like drag racing. I said, my God. But before you know it, the Crown Victoria overpowered my gas guzzler expedition at over 100 miles per hour. And I slammed on the brakes, ever so slightly, but firmly committed, because there was no way out. On my right and on my left, there were other vehicles traveling in parallel with me. And I was hoping and praying that everything would be all right. And as I was trying to get my composure, the car again changed onto the right lane. And at that moment, I caught a glimpse of the driver. It was an 85-year-old woman. And as I pulled parallel to her, I looked at her to smile at her, just to be sure. And I was expecting her to be slightly embarrassed with averted eyes as she was driving along. But no, she looked at me with defiance, as if to say, you ain't seen nothing yet. and she even got reinforcement from her finger. In my country, the finger will get you 20 years in jail, and that's if you are lucky the mob doesn't get to you first. Friends, that was 6 years ago. And that moment, that episode, that road rage episode, taught me that in Florida, I had to become a safe, defensive road warrior to survive the treacherous roads. And 6 years ago, I've been able to follow 3 simple rules that have made me survive. And I'm now here to share those 3 simple rules with you. The first rule is always aim high. Look 6 to 8 cars ahead of you so that you can anticipate and watch conditions that may actually affect the car in front of you before anything develops. And that will give you enough time to react. And that's very important, because you don't want to have surprises that will lead to a slam break moment. The second rule is to always follow the history of the road. Never ever lose sight of where your enemies, because as a road warrior, those other cars, they are your enemies. Never lose sight of where they are. Always use your three mirrors, the side mirrors and the rear view mirror, just to develop a profile of where everybody is, so that they don't sneak up on you and hide in your blind spot. And the third rule is to always leave your servant out. On the left and on the right, always make sure that there is no car or vehicle that is traveling parallel to you, so that if you need to swerve left or to swerve right, you always have enough room to make a safety maneuver, because you never know when an emergency traffic condition will warrant for you to be able to make that safety dive. And friends, to recap, to close, let's go over those three simple rules again. The first is to always aim high. And as I said before, that will give you enough time to anticipate what the 6 or 8 cars ahead of you are doing, because that may affect the car that is actually in front of you. And that rule also says, don't